This is Sg2 Perspectives, a conversation with Sg2 experts and industry thought leaders about the biggest trends in healthcare and what we expect that's going to mean for the future of healthcare delivery.
The teams then come together, share those proposed changes, and we have a large conversation about how do those forecasts all fit together at a clinical service line level and then across the entirety of the forecast. Then the teams come together and actually build the forecast. So they're building that forecast, they're translating those qualitative and quantitative targets into actual projections.
Welcome to Sg2 Perspectives. I'm your host, Trevor DaRin. My colleagues Karyl Kopaskie and Danni Park led a recent effort to look back at the backbone of what Sg2 has always done, which is demand forecasting, and try to assess how good we are at it. There's write-ups online where you can get into more detail, but I wanted Karyl and Danni to give some of the high-level takeaways and summary here. So Danni and Karyl, thanks so much for joining Sg2 Perspectives today.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much.
Karyl, you get the first high-level setup question. The why and the origin story of the Sg2 forecast is part of the secret sauce. Talk about our perspective on forecasting. Why do we rely on experts so much? And we have outstanding baseline data, but it's not just an algorithm, it's about the expert perspective. Give us that background.
We've been forecasting for over 25 years now. The origin of this is really in strategic decision making. A forecast is a tool, just like any other model. And the utility of the tool is about how good it can be at helping our members make strategic decisions that give them the advantage in the market to keep their doors open and provide the best healthcare for patients in their communities. So the secret sauce here is really that combination between powerful historical data and deep expertise and insight, bringing those two pieces together to provide the best strategic outlook for our members to make those decisions. If we go back to the history, these were intended in the very beginning. We were designing them as individual member forecasts. And then we made the leap to doing a national forecast and then the market-derived forecast for individual members through our SaaS platform. We've been chugging along ever since, getting better and better data. After the acquisition by Vizient, we had access to even better data, including the clinical database, the operational database. Every year, we improve the quality of our claims data feeds, in addition to CMS and other data feeds. We have some of the best data that's helping drive not only baseline creation, but also inform our historical trends and projections to give us that powerful data-driven forecast. On top of that, we have over 25 team members with clinical expertise in everything from imaging and post-acute care to cancer, cardiology, women's health, including specific expertise in pediatrics as well. All of those experts come together, analyze that historical data, look at those trends at the disease and procedure level, and inform those forecasts not only with what the data is telling them, but also what they're learning from recent clinical studies, from members themselves, from the policy landscape and how that affects individual utilization, as well as what are the latest tech trends? What are those disruptors doing? How is that going to all change utilization? Bringing together that powerful data asset alongside expert insight that's cultivated at the clinical level across the entire year, bringing all of that together to generate that powerful year-over-year forecast for 10 years. That's what allows us to make those big strategic calls that help inform our members with where do they need to go in the next 3, 5, 10 years to be the best in the market.
And we see that come into play in, Trevor, one of the posts that you mentioned. Completely unbiased, I think it's a really great post. And my name is maybe under the author tag. But for the ED deep dive that was recently published, we outlined exactly that. We're outlining how the historical data provided at least a foundation of understanding of what ED utilization is going to look like in the future. But by layering in that expertise and some of that nuance of other signals that our experts were tracking during the time helped provide a more comprehensive picture of what the landscape is going to look like, which allowed members to make better informed decisions going forward. How it played out essentially was in 2016, our experts made the call that low acuity visits within the ED were going to be shifting out to alternative sites of care, like urgent care centers. And what was going to be left were these medically complex, high acute patients. when we think about SG2, the question that always comes up for us first and foremost is why? It could potentially be the secret sauce of it all. But when our experts thought about why was this happening, that was contributing to some of this historical data, we found that, of course, an aging population was definitely a driver. Consumer preference as well was a major one. Some of those policy shifts and changes that were evolving, payment, all of these combined was contributing to this overall story of rising acuity despite low acuity shifting out. And what we found was that comparing that to now, what does that mean? It means we see in 2025 that low acuity is shifted out completely, especially when we factor in the drivers that COVID placed on pushing that shift faster. Now, with what's left is just increasingly medically complex comorbid patients. And some of the factors are still the same, still an aging population, still a rise in chronic disease, but we're understanding and seeing the added layer and pressure of behavioral health conditions and how that's playing a role with acuity. And so for our members who use these forecasts, they see it as decline or growth, but what they're really gaining from it is the why, the context, being able to then use that to make better informed strategic decisions going forward with this comprehensive picture.
Danni, great example, and Karyl, good story. Karyl, I wanted you to have a chance to talk a little about the process because we don't just all fly into Chicago for 2 weeks and bang out a forecast. It's more of like an annual cycle. And I think it shows how much we care about the stories behind the numbers.
Yeah, you can think about the forecast as having a few phases that really do last all year. We have the first is this historical data analysis and qualitative trend collection. And that's what our experts are doing right now. That qualitative trend collection is something those experts are doing 365, 24/7. They are constantly thinking about their clinical service areas, what's coming down the pike, what's happening in the literature, what are they hearing from members in the broader market. That expertise is cultivated every day by our experts. In the fall, we start to receive latest historical data feeds from a variety of different data sources, inpatient, outpatient claims, all of the ZN data assets we have access to, CMS data as well. And we start pairing together those qualitative insights that the experts have been collecting throughout the year, along with recent historical trends. So how can we validate the trends that we're hearing in the market? How can we validate the forecasts and projections that we created last year and ensure that kind of we're tracking towards what we're seeing in the historical data? And then what might the historical tea leaves be telling us about those future demands? So bringing together that qualitative insight with the quantitative insight to start generating what are those forecast targets that we need to have for all 27,000 different forecasts that are included in our forecast every year. We also want to be thinking about this by our different impact factors. That's really a core to the transparency in the forecast. And that's what allows for our members to really make those informed strategic decisions for their market. They're able to see what is the contribution of population alone, and then what are the different contributions by impact factor that our experts are trying to quantify over the 10-year timeframe. What are the specific impacts of policy for my state, my market? What are the technology trends that our experts are watching that are coming down the pike? And when do we think they're going to have the biggest impact in the market? What are those site of care redesign impacts that are going to be shifting care from one site to the other? And what do we think the timing for that shift looks like? As well as what are those consumerism trends and disruptor impacts that are going to affect how different patients are seeking care in the market? So our experts start thinking about those trends, quantifying them within the context of the forecast and considering them across those 5 additional impact factors layered on top of our demographic projections and start to put together what those proposed changes are. The teams then come together, share those proposed changes, and we have a large conversation about how do those forecasts all fit together at a clinical service line level and then across the entirety of the forecast. Then the teams come together and actually build the forecast. So they're building that forecast. They're translating those qualitative and quantitative targets into actual projections. That process takes several months. And then we have a product team that works to further translate those projections into the SaaS platform that our members get to use and manipulate every day. It takes 6 months of dedicated work to get the forecast from ideas and insights in our experts' head into a chart or a graph that we're sharing with you all next June, when the next forecast will come out. It takes quite a bit of time, but all of that time really matters for allowing the forecast to have the breadth of insight that we're able to provide across inpatient, outpatient, all of the different sites of care, all of the different clinical care groups, so those disease and procedure pairings, as well as across all of the different impact factors. We spend a lot of time building out that nuance so that those rolled up forecasts, those projections in an individual market are meaningful tools for our members to make those strategic decisions that are so critical today.
Good outlining of our philosophy and the process. Has that made us any good at forecasting?
We actually do retrospective analyses to make sure that we are on task. We have a process where we look back at the market level, at the national level to try to assess how accurate are we. Most recent analysis, our inpatient projections are usually within a 1% tolerance. And we have some specific stories of things that we projected that were not necessarily trends that were captured in the historical data alone. Those specific callouts of those instances where the historical data may have been trending in one direction, but our experts had the additional insight of local market knowledge as well as clinical insight to bend those curves and anticipate when we would start to see shifts, when we would start to see growth or decline. Those are the moments that we are the most excited about because those allow our members to make effective decisions about where the market is going to go, not just where it has been.
Danni, give us a little more detail there. Give us a few of those examples where if it had just been an algorithm or a straight line of a historic trend, it would have been a big miss.
At a most basic level, population data comes to mind. And if we were to just look at historical population data, we'd find a lot of inflation or tempering of utilization over time. One forecast that is especially or more impacted than others could be post-acute care. Even in this past year's forecast, we forecasted out substantial growth over the next 10 years for post-acute care. If we were to just look at the population data on its own, we'd see that an aging population is driving that growth and could potentially drive that growth beyond what is realistically being able to be captured by health systems. With our experts being able to have the nuance and being able to track all these signals and impart those signals within the various impact factors, we can have a clearer picture of what utilization might actually look like over the course of the 10 years. With consumer preference, policy changes potentially in play, how does that shape at any point in the 10-year forecast? Is something that historical data isn't able to be as flexible with just on its own.
Maybe I can share an additional example. This is a little bit more retrospective. Danni's just described a fabulous example of what we're focusing on today, and we will have a post coming soon on that topic. One of my favorite stories from the past, because I have a personal affinity in my heart for all things women's health, it was a story that we looked at with the gynecologic wellness visit. And so there again, if we looked at population trends alone, we did see some slowing in population growth in the reproductive women population starting back in 2017, 2018. But what we had also been watching very closely on the expert side were two key trends. We saw some changes in guidelines for HPV screening during the gynecologic wellness visit, a shift from annual cytology exam to the HPV PCR testing, which began only needing to happen every 3 years, and now it's every 5 years. A shift away from needing to have that annual pap smear to that pap smear only happening every 3 to 5 years. And we also saw direct-to-consumer disruption. So this is back in the early days of companies like Nurex and Maven Clinic that were providing direct-to-consumer prescriptions specifically for something like birth control. If we thought about the elements of the gynecologic wellness visit, why would a woman go to this visit every year? Well, she's going to get her screens, she's going to get her oral contraceptive prescription, and she's going to have that relationship and that conversation with her OB-GYN. We see two trends eroding two of those three components. We see a direct-to-consumer option that makes it easy for women to get those prescriptions mailed right to their door. And we're seeing some guideline changes that make the screenings less frequent, and that need for screening every year is shifting away. Rather than just showing the slowing growth that we would expect just from population trends alone, our experts actually shifted that to a decline, which is a decline that we actually were able to confirm in the claims data in the coming years afterwards. That's another great example of our experts keeping an ear to the ground. What are disruptors doing and how might that change utilization? But then also, what are those clinical bodies that are determining what does practice look like? What are practice innovations that are going to have a material effect on utilization? Our experts integrate all of those different perspectives alongside those historical and population trends to anticipate where the volumes will go.
Danni, our forecasts get used all the time in market overviews or to kick off a strategic planning process. If you were leading a strategy team, what do you think the best way to use the forecast is?
I will draw on my couple of years where I was working on the member center team, getting to engage with them on how they were using the forecast. And overall, what I saw was the forecast was a compass where it grounded you in a location and pointed you in the direction that you needed to go. And through that initial decision making of where you wanted to go as an organization, you were then able to layer in the additional wealth of data resources available today and be able to better understand then for your market in particular, what other decisions, what other resources you kind of needed to get to the next point. Through all of that, you're able to create essentially a path forward. But the members continue to see the forecast as that initial grounding point, the centralized location of where decisions essentially need to be made. They then use it as the jumping off point as how do we then get the ball rolling, make the decisions from there, get all the pieces together. That's the greatest thing about the forecast is we maybe come up with the why, but the members come up with the how, what, when, where of it all.
Another piece that I would add to that is the forecast can provide you that Sg2 perspective. It can tell you what our experts are thinking about the future of demand, the future of a technology, the future of care redesign. But what really brings it together is then engaging with the expert that built that forecast to help you decide what are those impacts going to be in my market. It's the real secret sauce. If we think about the experts informing the forecast, that gets us a number on the screen. But what really gets us to a strategic decision are those conversations, that advisory component that every member has access to, where we can bring in the expert themselves to talk through what does this trend mean for you and your market? What does this decision point tell you when you think about the unique features on the ground in your community? The forecast can provide opportunities. It can tell you where might there be growth, where we wouldn't necessarily be expecting it. Maybe we need to anticipate a different type of way to capture that care. So it can present you a lot of opportunities. It can highlight a lot of exciting new trends that are going to be coming your way. It can help you prepare for the future and the future of change. But you also have a team that can help you make those decisions. It's not using that number by itself. It's using that number plus having that expertise on hand to help you make the most informed decision you can.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. When I've seen our forecasts used best, strategic planning teams and our members rely on our experts the same way the rest of their organization relies on them. I trust this number, but you need to be able to prove it to me because I'm going to have to prove it to everyone else in my organization. I have to know the story as well as you do. So thank you both so much for sharing some of the high-level takeaways. Our members look forward to reading in more depth. There'll be links in the descriptions to the two articles we were talking about. Thanks so much for sharing your research here and perspective.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us, and or follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn at Sg2 Healthcare. And if you want to talk more about innovative healthcare strategies, you can always email me at sg2perspectives@sg2.com. Finally, Sg2 is a Vizient company, and there are a bunch of Vizient podcasts that you might like. You can find them at Vizient /podcasts. Have a great day.